Welcome to the Sem Says podcast, the podcast where seminarians say what's said at the Sem. I'm your host, Nikolai and today I'm joined by Andrew Pinto, who's in first pre-theology for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. It's great. Guess we planned to do this a little bit ago, but we're just getting to it now. So.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself and the listeners about yourself. You're in your second year of seminary. How's that going?
So it's been good. I have a kind of long vocation story, but I won't get into that. It's not as cool as Damien of Molokai. Well, okay. His story in general, but just a little bit about myself. Grew up in Westchester, and I went to Archmere Academy in Delaware, good high school, and then I went to Ave Maria University, and that's kind of really what kind of changed my life. I knew that the Lord drew me there and just had an incredible experience. Actually started reading and studying for the first time in my life, which most guys kind of skip out on in high school. Well, not the smart ones. The smart ones actually know what to do in high school. I just got really into the great books. I did humanities, studied the great books there. Mm-hmm. Had an incredible professor who took us through a book a week for 2 years, and I was pretty much opened up to the world of ideas, just reading in general, and that on top of incredible faith formation that I had at Ave Maria, which I desperately needed at the time. My faith was always there early in my life, but it was there where it was really formed, and I understood, and I started to peer the depths of the faith by myself and kind of, go to holy hours and things like that. And I just had incredible opportunities while I was there. While I was at Ave, going into my junior year, every year I would say like a 54-day novena of what I should do in the summer. And the Lord always provided. In one summer, and I think this kind of sparked my desire for adventure, which is why I love this book so much. But I ended up living in Spain for a summer with this religious order. And the Lord kind of drew me there. When I was meeting with my professor at Ave, I said, I don't know what I want to do in the summer. It was kind of towards the end of my novena. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I teach. I study politics. I'm not fully sure. I like Spanish. Maybe I could do something with Spanish. And he said, actually, I have a priest, son who's a priest in Spain. You could live with them for free in the summer and do that. And so it was sort of at the end of my novena, I was praying with it, and it all just came together. At first, I studied Spanish at a university there, University of Navarre, which is founded by
Jose Maria
Escriva, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, so the first month I was enjoying it, learning Spanish. They're still kind of doing normal things. And then once I went to live with those priests, and I saw young priests on fire with the faith, sort of like I saw in Damien, this like fire to just do so much for the Lord. I just saw something I never saw before, and I came back that summer, and whole long process of that was my junior year. My senior year, I really started to discern, think about the priesthood, started talking to seminarians and priests, and the Lord sort of just slowly led me there through many cool experiences that I won't get into. But yeah, that's why I'm here. It's been an incredible experience. First 2 years in seminary, spiritual years unbelievable. Philadelphia does a great job for that. And Father Giuffre is unbelievable, just leading us in the spiritual year, growing in faith, and then just been loving academics so far. First year of pre-theology, actually, in studies, being removed for a year was nice, but getting back to it now is great. And it's nice to have some time on the side to read good things like Damien the Leper. So that was the one book that I was able to finish this year besides school reading.
Awesome. Yeah, so to get into that, that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today, is this book, Damien the Leper, by John Farrow. So this book was published in 1937, so it's a little bit old, but like reading it today, you wouldn't be able to tell. Yeah. Like, it could have been written last week, and it's still just the same awesome stuff. But I think he was a filmmaker.
And it shows through his storytelling is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It shows through the connection there. So
at the time when he is writing about... Now, Saint Damien of Molokai, he wasn't even declared blessed, so he was just like this holy man who became famous for his works, and so he went and wrote this biography, which I think probably helped in the cause for his canonization, I'd guess. Wow. So, let's get into that.
Yeah.
So,
everything piled together, too, because imagine all these stories were out there somewhere, but this guy just did a good job of putting it all together in one book that people were like, whoa, this man is saintly. Look at all this he did. He compiled it, essentially. So, definitely imagine that contributed to it. Right.
So get into that. I read this book a couple months ago, and then I think you just finished reading it, Andrew?
Mm-hmm.
I guess just start, give me the background of Damien.
Sure.
As much as you were able to.
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you a background to how I even read this, and I'm curious how you got into it, too. But So my buddies and I, Mickey and John, are also at the seminary. They're in the college side. We did a pilgrimage to Lourdes, Fatima, Spain this summer. And I was praying. I said, I'm going to bring one book. I'm going to bring one book on the trip. And I was praying, Lord, what do you want me to bring? And I'm literally about to leave. I have the Gospel of Life by John Paul II. I just wanted to read his encyclicals. And I hear a knock on the door, Amazon delivery. Damien of Molokai comes in right as I'm about to leave to go to Mickey's house to fly out. So before that, I heard about it. I was in the Bronx this summer. A guy was reading Damien the Leper. It looked really cool. He kept talking about it. And his personality fit Damien so well. He's a simple, quiet man who did his work, did his prayer, and served the Lord. And we were in the homeless shelter, and he presented it to the homeless guys there. And I was like, this is incredible. I got to read this. So went back, ordered it, hoping it would come in before, and it came in right at the time of the
That's
trip.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
this is the book that I took on the trip with me. But, I mean, there's so many things in this. But one thing I loved right from the start that this book grasped my attention was the opening scene was unbelievable. So, like we said, he's an incredible storyteller, John Farrow.
Right.
But he paints the scene of a superior general in his room, busy down with work, rainy, stormy night, empty room, no furniture, kind of just simple living, and the only thing on his desk was a globe. And there's a fire crickling in the background. That was the only noise. The rain was providing noise for him. And he's looking at the globe. He's got a pile of papers on his desk. He's happy that his new order is kind of springing up. You know, he has petitions to send people, and he's looking at his globe, seeing where he should send his seminarians, his brothers in the order. And a priest knocks on the door, a fellow priest who is his seminarian, the superior general's, his name is Father Pierre, knocks on the door, and they're kind of going over the business of the order. And Father Pierre, catching hold of a paper on his desk, is reminded of an incident of one of his novices who had disobeyed orders and wrote directly to the superior general asking if he could go on a mission. And the superior general essentially says, pondering over it, whether this is the right thing or not, and Father Pierre says he should be punished. This is no way for a novice to act, to write directly to the superior general. And he says, Father Pierre says all of that, and the superior general in his wise manner, I was just picturing this, he says, surely such a wish to serve can be no great crime. And then Father Pierre said, hurry is a failing of fools. And then the superior general says, on the other hand, wise men often fail from procrastination. Celerity is the mother of good fortune. He has done much who leaves nothing over till tomorrow. Festina lente is a royal motto, as our young friend has probably heard. And then so he proceeds to say, yeah, okay, he disobeyed orders, but also he has this desire in him that you see played throughout the whole book of doing more because he believes he has a mission. And so it's brilliant. The superior general, this order of this perfect balance of law and mercy, says, you know what, I will punish him. I'll send him banishment to the Hawaiian Islands to serve in place of his brother on the the island of lepers. And it was so cool. The start of that book, it's like this superior general sees something in Damien in his desire to serve. Yeah,
no, it's awesome. And it's a funny way, like, looking back at it, we're like, oh wow, that's cool, like, that's a great saint story. I can imagine, like, in the moment it really being, like, really hard too to accept, like, okay, what are we going to do about this guy? And the superior has to have that wisdom and insight, and the Holy Spirit has to guide him in what to do. But Damien as well, of course, like, he had to make that request to begin with. And he had to be willing to go to the ends of the earth, to serve God's people in this poor place. So it's just an amazing coincidence almost that we can look back and see, wow, I see how God worked through that.
Yeah.
But, like, almost at the time.
Well, they play that out later in the book when Damien tells the story from his side of him writing the letter to the superior general, and in it he said he's thinking, rightly so, did I mess up in doing this? Was I rash? Was I disobedient? Because ultimately we need to be obedient. It's one of the vows we take. And so he's like, was I disobedient? And you could see it play and sting his conscience. But ultimately there must have been something there in his judgment or his forthrightness to ask, his braveness to ask. And often fortune favors the bold. You don't want to be so, pushing your way, because that could be disobedient. Yeah, you see it played out in his own conscience, and ultimately ends up working out for him and for the world. He sends him, and you see that through Damien's. That was one incredible theme throughout the whole book, is Damien's pushing this. Like he wanted to get stuff done. He was constantly fighting with the Hawaiian public services and health services on the island.
Yeah.
But he knew when to tame it back when he had to, when he shouldn't be obedient. But his headstrongness served him well oftentimes. But it's how do we find this balance?
Yeah. Well, let's take it a step back. So kind of the background is Damien was originally named Joseph de Veuster, Danish, if I remember right.
From Belgium.
Belgium, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was born in Belgium and enters religious life. His older brother was ordained a priest in this religious order before he was, so he kind of followed after his brother's footsteps. And he always had that big drive of wanting to serve. So the call went out from Hawaii. This was in the 1800s, so before Hawaii was one of the United States, for the need for priests, basically. And so he answered that call, and he went there. And he didn't go directly to Molokai, which is where they isolated the lepers, but he went to serve in the wider Hawaii area first, and then to Molokai itself. So basically the way that was broken down, my understanding is leprosy became a big problem in Hawaii, and so the Hawaiian Board of Health decided to segregate, isolate all of the people with leprosy to this one small island of Molokai. And it was very harsh. There wasn't a lot of structure to the society there. The villages weren't like well built up like they might have been on the bigger islands. But the people there, as human beings, they needed care. They needed somebody to care for them, and many of them were Christian and Catholic, so they needed a priest for them too. So that's kind of how, just to basically set the details of the scene, that's how Damien went there. Was he volunteered and said, I'm willing to do this. He was allowed by a superior general to go to Hawaii in the first place, and then by the bishop of that area to the parishes of Molokai, the island itself.
Yeah.
Right.
And there was, and not to jump too far ahead, I'm sure we could come back to different points, but exactly when he transitions to Molokai, he served most of it. A lot of the book in the beginning covered his time before him being a leper on the island with the lepers, and that was the work he did there was incredible. But one thing that hit me so hard in the book is when he actually transitioned to the island of Molokai, and the bishop had come, and he says, "Look, they need help there." The bishop essentially says, this quote from the book, he says, "In the future, any man that went to Molokai would have to remain there for the rest of his life." This is the author saying this. As the bishop said this, his voice faltered. Even he could not command such a sacrifice of anybody. And as soon as the bishop asked, the moment he asked, it says, no sooner were his words ended than 4 priests, one of whom was Damien, sprang to their feet and pleaded to be allowed to live and work among the lepers. Yeah. So without any hesitation, and this is something that there's just a theme in general from Thomas More. I had a great class from Thomas More in college, that you have to ask yourself, am I willing to die for the faith now, early in life, so that when the moment comes, you act without hesitation, that you're willing to step up. And you see Damien throughout his whole time on the island, he's acting and constantly saying yes to the Lord, so that when the time came, when the bishop asked, can anyone serve as a priest of my priest to go to this island of lepers, instantly he stood up and said, I will go. And within the hour, they said he was on the boat. And even within the hour, didn't have time to pack his clothes. He was worried that they wouldn't let him go over. He was on the island, and as soon as he even got on the island, probably what maybe you would do is unpack your stuff, get settled, put your clothes away, organize your books, get some food here. Right away as he got to the island, he started doing baptisms, putting bandages on people. So just unbelievable stuff. But there's so much before that we could talk about before he even gets to the island.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and even in his early life too, there was one thing that was cool. He talked about how when he was born, he came out, his fist clenched, and she saw him make the sign of the cross as if it was a prophecy of him becoming a priest. And then also, I think when he was young, he was working with his uncle or something, or he was assisting digging graves as a blacksmith. Right. And little did he know that was going to be a prophecy of his future of digging the graves of these abandoned, rejected lepers on the outside. So many graves, even of itself, that's enough work for one man.
Yeah.
The amount of graves that he dug.
No, it's awesome. So kind of just to give a little bit of a brief overview, and then let's talk about some details. So once he started ministry on the island, he had to build a lot of the structure for them. Not just like physical structures of buildings, because their buildings were really like shanty shambles, and I don't think he didn't even have a place to stay when he got there. He slept under a tree for weeks, which, like, that sounds awesome. Like, oh, I sleep under a tree in Hawaii. Like,
that's so romantic.
Yeah, like, that sounds like vacation, but you think like the bugs, and you're sleeping on the hard ground and roots, and maybe nice for like a day or two, but I feel like
that was an eerie scene in and of itself.
Yeah.
As he was describing the book, he says he's laying under the canopy tree, and that's where he ended up dying. I think.
Oh yeah,
dying under the canopy tree
or buried. Yeah,
yeah, buried. Yeah. He described his first night. He had helped a bunch of people that day as soon as he got to the island right away, and then he slept under the canopy tree, and he was sleeping, and he hears something crawling up to him, and he looks over, and it's the face of another leper, and the leper was pretty much like just observing, like, who is this man that's come to help us out?
Yeah, and
it kind of showed. I think it showed that he's willing to live among the people right from the start.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of an eerie scene, though. Imagine just someone crawling up to you, you're sleeping on a tree, getting bit by mosquitoes and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, wild. And from the testimonies within this book, but it seems like from all the sources he takes from, he really went into it with just such a spirit of humility, and he didn't complain. Like, he didn't go, oh wait, where's my room? Where's my bed? Like, what, you guys didn't prepare something for me? Like, he really entirely gave himself to service for what he was doing. And so, was able to build a rectory for himself to live in, but only after serving the people first, and helping to build up their town, and getting them clean water and things like that too. So it wasn't just, okay, sir, I got to make sure I'm serviced first and then you, but completely the opposite. It's really an awesome
That's one thing
witness.
That hit me so personally on this pilgrimage, but just in general, is like, what do I do? Like, when I come to a new place, or am I willing to just focus on the others first and then myself, or as soon as I get somewhere, I have to get settled, get unpacked, get ready? Or even on the pilgrimage, we were changing constant locations, and I had to make sure everything was set before I could converse with the people we were staying with. And just reading Damien of Molokai, like, no, just serve the people first and then take care of yourself. And ultimately, that's the life of a priest. That's the life we're trying to build up to. So we're not going to come into the seminary and start right at Damien of Malakai's level, and neither did he.
Of course.
But that's the goal. I mean, and that's the ideal to shoot for. And that's why reading the lives of these saints like that, refreshing yourself with their stories, is so fruitful and vital.
Yeah.
There was one line in the beginning of the book, kind of in the introduction, when he speaks of the man who constantly finds things to complain about versus the man who just accepts life as it is and sees the beauty even in the little things. There's a line, he's talking about sort of these differences of people, and he says, they lead a sad life, nourishing themselves on bitters and garbages. They who have the luckier taste, who amongst 1,000 defects seize upon a single beauty that they may have hit upon by chance. It's like Damien had so many negative things, but he just saw, like, the good in everything. Even amidst the graves, he would walk around the grave at night praying the rosary, thinking of how fortunate they were to be in heaven and how he's going to be there one day. Or even his one solace in the pipe, in his pipe, that he would allow himself to smoke at night at the end of a long day. And not even, he would give away his one possession of his pipe. He would let the lepers smoke out of his pipe. I don't let, some people drink out of my water bottle. He's letting the lepers smoke out of his pipe, sleep in his bed, when he's not there. It's unbelievable selflessness and love of the human person.
So, obviously, spoiler alert for anybody who's not aware, but Damien himself develops leprosy after years of service, and so he's founded, I forget what the number is, but he founded like 5 parishes or so on the island, like building different churches to offer mass and worship at different points. Maybe it's not as many as 5, but it's at least a few.
And those stories are crazy in themselves.
Yeah. But so he spent all this time, he's kind of brought in like a basic hospital system, a religious order of sisters come in to minister. And so he's really been able to extend the mission that he has by bringing in other people. As you mentioned, like arguing with the Board of Health, the government, to get resources for the people as well. So that's a big part of his mission. But after all these years, he's rewarded by getting leprosy himself, right? And so that his last few years are suffering with that terrible disease. Kind of your body starts to decay and fall apart and you lose control. But it's really interesting. What I found in the book was John Farrow relates that after he got leprosy, his temperament kind of changed to get even more peaceful.
That's right.
Where he was so driven that he would get very frustrated by things being slow or things not working how he wanted them to. He's like, I'm trying to do things for these people. But once he developed leprosy, he was able to just be at peace.
Wow.
And just to serve. I forget if it was John Farrow or Robert Louis Stevenson, but related that his temperament changed so much so that like he stopped yelling at and being frustrated by the Board of Health people who, you know, generally put up barriers rather than offered help generously. But I just thought, like, that's such an awesome witness to be like, when I suffer more, am I more at peace or less? Because like usually it's less. You know,
the best line with that, it almost brought me to tears, as other lines did. But he was so, like you're saying, work driven the entire time while he's there, every single day. Devil is the idol's workshop. He crushed that with focus on the Lord and prayer, but work. He put himself to work. But as soon as he contracted leprosy, he said, instead of giving the kids tools to help build, he gave them toys to play with, because he just wanted to enjoy the final years that he had in life, the final moments of playing with the kids instead of doing work. And he was able to just appreciate life and enjoy life versus this mentality that he needed to do. He needed to serve, he needed to work. And one other line that was so powerful when they described the transition from him doing all the work with the lepers, and for some reason, miraculous reason, he didn't contract leprosy early on, and neither did the sisters. Remember, the sisters prayed. They didn't contract leprosy. They still didn't when they were on the island. But Damien gets up to Mass. Instead of opening the Mass with, my brethren, you know, addressing his brethren, he says, we lepers. And that he steps up to Mass, instead of my brethren, we lepers. And he addresses himself as one of them, and everyone knew what he meant when he was saying we lepers, and everyone just changed. And it was almost like they saw him, you know, differently, or really saw the loving character that he was. Like, he has become one of us through his own choice, which is sacrificial and beautiful.
Right, absolutely.
Just everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could really see Christ in that, obviously. We've got sinful man here on earth who's hopeless by himself. And Christ not only, like, comes to be our Savior, but he becomes one of us. And he suffers with us. I mean, he suffers even more than we do through his passion and the cross. So you could see that very clearly in Damien, is that he enters into their suffering. And not even just, like, marginal way, like, okay, I'm going to, like, minister to you suffering people, but I'm going to suffer with you. And through that, the people saw that, and that enlivened their faith, like, more than anything, I think.
And there was another part to that, too, kind of just connecting with the people so much on the island. But maybe you can give a background to Lili Lukiatlani after this. I don't know if you know much about her, but she was the Queen of Hawaii.
Oh, sure.
At one point, essentially, she comes to visit, and she's just in tears with, like, who is this man that came to my people to help them out from Belgium? She says, these are my people. And then he essentially says, but they're my parishioners. And so it's like, these are our people. And he's really just become one of them, you know, which is unbelievable. But she was the queen of, you know, visited and heard about his story, as the whole world heard about his story. He had no idea. And he's like, stop sending me his family. He would write letters throughout the whole book to his family and getting updates. And as people started to know about Damien, the whole world started to recognize him, and he told his brother, like, stop writing about me, stop giving my letters out to the world. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be known. Whereas I would be like, yeah, I'm doing a great job. Like, look at me.
No, it's true. Well, it's funny too. I think it was associated with the part with the Queen, or maybe he got some award. Somebody gave him an award, and his bishop was there with him to receive the reward. And they pinned the medal on his chest or whatever it is. And he was so embarrassed that he wanted to take it off. And his bishop said, "Don't you dare!"
Yeah, don't keep that.
Basically, it's like, you know, this is something of honor, and you deserve this. But even more so, like, this is what people are giving to you. So it's not just about aggrandizing yourself. It's not prideful. Like, it's humility to accept the reward. So I think that's something too that it's really awesome to see, that people recognize something great in him and were willing to honor that. I'm not an expert on the Queen of Hawaii, but that section, I mean, it was really awesome to read about. I looked up her on Wikipedia, and it was really neat because she wasn't Catholic. I think she was Episcopalian or a different kind of Protestant denomination. But for her to to give such honor to the Catholic priest instead of being like, oh, we don't like the Catholics or something like that. That's a really awesome thing too.
And that's an undertone throughout the whole book, is his work with the Protestants, that he saw them as completely human too, and doing Christ's work. Although theological differences. Like, there was a story when there was like 7 Dutchmen drowning in the sea, and he's just on one of his walks before he's on the leper island, and he runs in knowing it's shark infested waters and saves all of these men who are like pretty much half unconscious in the water, and drags them all out, and they're like, oh, we didn't know Catholics were good, or oh, we didn't know we could help each other, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And there was one other point with the medal, which was funny too, and I like, it's such a good insight, and this could be its own topic separate from the book, of learning how to receive. Like, humility is just, hey Nikolai, great game, thank you. That's the response. Versus, no, it was all God, or as Father Carbonaro says, it wasn't that good. Oh, it was all God. No, it wasn't that good. But just learning how to accept, recognition, because it's honest. Humility is honesty. It's the truth. And so, okay, I did this work, I'll wear it. And he didn't want to wear the medal. He understood it properly. He wore the medal. But then later in the book, they describe how that medal collected dust in his room for the rest of his life. Right. Because he obviously wasn't wearing it out as if he came to the leper island to win some type of medal from the people. But that was a great balance of, okay, I will wear this. I'll be obedient to my bishop, much like Thomas More wore the big medal around his neck, the chancellor, right? Because he knew that was his office, and he knew it was fitting, he knew it was proper. Damien wore it and then put it away, didn't show it off later, collected dust until his death, essentially. Right. Which is a great balance again. He's such a balanced man.
Right. Yeah. So, something that, like, in seminary, I think we tend to learn a lot of one-sided lessons of humility, and as you mentioned with Father Carbonaro, like, be humble, be humble, be humble. And sometimes it is good to learn to, how do I accept recognition in a humble way? And not to say that that's like a flaw of the seminary, but that's something that we don't learn very much. And so it is awesome to see, like, whoa, here's an example of that, like, played out. And, okay, that's really awesome to see, like, okay, you can accept something with such great humility, and that's what I want to. Yeah.
Because there's such thing as false humility as well.
Yeah,
right. And that could be just as dangerous. One example I always come to is, Aristotle sees the virtue of magnanimity not in the Christian light. Magnanimity is greatness of heart in the Christian aspect, but to Aristotle it was a fittingness, a properness. Like, you are the man for the job, step up and do it. It's not cocky. I relate this to sports because I love basketball. So Kobe Bryant, give me the ball. I'm going to win the game. This is not cocky. I'm the fitting man for it. Winston Churchill, being the prime minister, knowing he has the abilities to step up, or stop, the Nazis' invasion. Because I'm the fitting man for this. And I think that's hit me huge, Aristotle's understanding of magnanimity, in a huge way of, okay, if you have certain gifts, skills, talents, use them. God gave them to you. It's fitting. It's false humility to reject your talents. And humility, again, is the truth. The glory of God, man fully alive, as Father Spurger, the great Father Spurger, tells me. And so, we need to kind of, like, recognize our gifts. And that'll play out in parishes as well, too. Like, all right, you're better at, running these certain events than I am, or this youth group. Recognize your gifts. It's not bragging. You're just good at that. God gave you that.
Yeah. Well, that's, you have to make it a homily, but the parable of the talents, right? Jesus gives the parable. The master gives, you get 5 talents, money. You get 5, you get 3, you get 1. Okay. You're supposed to use the talents. You're supposed to use them and give that back to the master. And the man who's, as you said, he's falsely humble. He's like, oh, well, I knew that you were demanding, so I hid it away. Well, he's the wicked servant, because he wasted the talent that he was given. It's not sinful pride to use the talents that the Lord has given us and return glory to him by those.
There's 2 points, kind of jumping back to the story. There's just the idea of courage. So that was a consistent theme as well. But something that really struck me is, like, actually, I just had read, I don't know if you've ever read Solzhenitsyn's Harvard Address, and one of the outlining points, he pretty much a critique of America in a good way, not a cynical way, but he says a lack of the decline of courage is at the source of a lot of downfall and kind of evil and things like that. And the courage that I saw in Damien was so inspiring, so cool, because I think as men we desire that, and courage isn't just being the strongest, baddest dude. It's like in little ways too. But he was so courageous, and we can all choose to do this. It's hard, but we can choose to do it. But there's two stories in particular. One's probably my favorite. I'll share this. So I don't know if you remember. There was one night Damien's up and he hears like some type of noise in the woods. He hears a scream. And it's like an incantation. He kind of knows that it's something, pagan, sketchy's going on.
Right.
And so that the day kind of goes by. He sees on his door like an abracadabra. It's like a kind of voodoo type thing. Sure. And he knows exactly what it was. And essentially he sends it on a pig to kind of this village and sends it around so that the people would see, like, look, I got your abracadabra, stop trying to scare me. Like, I know my principles, I know my morals, I know the faith. And they send the pig back to him dead, slit throat, as if some crazy stuff was going to happen. And jokingly he says, oh, thanks for the pork. And he eats the pork. But later at night they were kind of annoyed by that, and he's sleeping and he hears some scratching on his window, and it's a woman. She kind of alerts him like something's going on, and he steps outside and he sees a distant flame in the background of the woods, and immediately he's ticked off. He's pissed. When a man's pissed, like William Wallace in Braveheart, he has a mission. He's going to act courageous, and he's going to so he gets out of his room, starts walking with his stick by himself, an hour-long trek into the woods, and he happens upon the cave where there's some type of ritual sacrifice going on. And he sees them all dancing and 30 men doing kind of crazy things, and they slit a dog's throat. Not to be so explicit here, this is what happened. And he slits the dog's throat, pouring the blood into the very, very evil type stuff. And Damien's just watching, waiting for his moment to kind of see what he can do. And as soon after that, I think it was the Maui, the leader, the evil cult leader, brings out a doll. And he knows it's Damien, and he's dressed in a cassock, and he sees his old rosary beads, and he puts it around the doll, the Maui does. And as soon as Damien saw that, he was angry. He was pissed, like a father protecting his children or something from an invader. And he storms into the cave by himself amidst 30 kind of men with evil stuff going on, rips the doll apart, stomps on it, kind of squishes it in the ground. And the people right away were going to attack him, but they realized, like, this man just ripped apart our voodoo doll. Something big was supposed to happen. And as soon as he did that, they all kind of scurried away because they were fearful of him, that he just took down our, idol. And then the next day, he's looking at the faces in the crowd. He sees some of his parishioners, that he had before. And the next day, he comes in, and as the weeks go by, he sees the guys who were in this voodoo evil cave coming back to mass. And it's like... That's what courage does. And the Lord works through courage, but it's hard to do. But that was an unbelievable scene. I said I would have put my covers on as soon as that lady knocked at my window. How do I pray for the courage to be like him?
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's an awesome thing, and I think we tend to have somewhat the outlook of like, we don't have that courage to evangelize. Well, we don't have like pagans out in the streets, right? Everybody, they know about Jesus. They know that they're welcome to come to church. Like, but he had that mission of like, no, there's something wrong going on, and I'm going to go into that and act as the Lord would act here. Tear down the evil things, tear down the idols, really, and that's what changes their hearts. That's what they saw. This is what's right, and this is what's wrong. And so they had to flee away from what's wrong. Yeah. So
there's many stories like that. Even the one where the lepers, there was one where they told of people who haven't received the sacraments in over 2 years, and as soon as he heard that, he's like, this can't be, like, this can't happen. And they were like, they're on the other side of the mountain, so far away. And he goes, I don't care, I'm going now. And they said, no, this is a stormy season, you have to wait, till the spring or whatever. And he says, no, I'm going now. And he goes along with one local guy. He's like, all right, you're crazy. They go on a long journey with the horse, and they have to swim in the water. They go on it by canoe. The canoe capsizes. He's in shark-infested water. The guy's like, we should swim out of here. He's like, nope, stay calm. He's kicking the canoe to the shore. Sharks are coming at him. This is something in a story, and you're like, no, this actually happened. And then he gets, somehow gets out of the shark-infested water. It's funny. He says, All I had left was my bravery with me. And then he climbs up a big ravine with all types of shrubs and trees that are tearing his arms apart, bleeding. He gets over one ravine and he's like, all right, I'm here. And then, nope, he sees another mountain he has to go over. He's like, I'm still persisting, bites his fruit, gets enough energy, goes over the next ravine. Nope, it's not even that one. And he persists. And he ends up getting knocked unconscious and passing out. And he was like, this is it, I'm dead. And he is unconscious, wakes up in the village. People rescued him. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And as soon as he wakes up, he goes and starts baptizing people.
Yeah,
it's like, who is this guy? He's superhuman.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the awesome thing about saint stories in general, is just being, well, like, this is a real man who lived and walked on this earth. And that's inspiring to me personally, to be like, yeah, I'm not just called to be, an NPC, as you say, like just a side character that doesn't do anything or affect anything, but like, I'm called to be a saint in that same heroic way. Maybe not in Hawaii and crossing mountains, but in my parish, I'm called to be heroic in whatever way the Lord gives to me.
Not just a function of the diocese,
exactly.
A functionary who's serving.
Yeah.
And that's what we see these stories, and they're great for our imagination, but it's like, no, Damien's sainthood started when he was a little kid digging graves for the grave digger, and that's how he was able to. You look at it, 3,000 graves he dug on that, and he put up, they said, 2,000 pipes to connect the water system and everything. It's like he did that because he was doing that when he was 6, digging graves and doing these little saintly things along the way, that to the point where it compiles to 3,000 graves.
Right.
It's not like, here's my quota, I'm going to reach Damien of Molokai's 3,000 graves. It's like, no, just, as Father Carbonaro again, do your homework. Stop wearing chains around as mortification. It's like, do your classwork, do your holy hour, get to bed on, at a reasonable time. That's going to be sainthood. And you look back at your life, and Damien probably looks back at his life. It's like, oh yeah, it happened through a bunch of small ways.
Yeah, that's a good insight too. Do you have any other summarizing thoughts?
I think there's so many stories, again, a lot that we sort of missed out on. One thing that just touched me profoundly is his close contact with these rejected people. I mean, we didn't really describe what it was like, the lepers were like. First of all, there was great debauchery, sexual license on the island. People had no hope, so they're kind of doing whatever. Yeah. But just, he would be in confession with these people, and their smell was so putrid that it was almost unbearable. He had to take, sometimes he would have to get out so he didn't pass out outside to breathe fresh air. But even amidst all that, like, he had to get so close to the lepers in order to hear their confessions. Yeah. And for me, it was just, wow, like, just how we need to see the other person. It's like, he's seeing them, and all these great, they had worms crawling through their feet, and he's wrapping them with bandages. And it's just like, how can I, maybe I won't have that, but this will help me, see the person, see my fellow brothers, see people that you might not connect with or that you're different from. And just like, whatever, I'm going to do the Lord's work. And that was helpful for that. And then there's a lot of other spiritual things for me personally on this. Of what's the balance between, assertiveness and the humble priest who steps back and lets the sheep go. And it was actually huge. It ended up culminating in my novena at Lourdes. I was in the last day of Lourdes and took a lot of things to prayer. And Damien was just helpful in facilitating like my prayer of how can I become this. It came to me. It's silent service of Damien of Molokai. Lord, grant me this. Damien, give me your silent service so I can serve the Lord. But that was one thing, I'm sure. What was one takeaway for you that, I guess, a grand one?
Yeah, I guess like a big takeaway for me is just praying for that great spirit of service, especially. And use the term magnanimity. Yeah, I always think that's a tongue twister. Yeah. But that greatness of spirit of like, I want to do good things for the Lord, but it's not just whatever I want. It's not just like, okay, let me think of like what's the best way that I could do something great and big for God. But it's like, no, like, God, let me do whatever you want me to do, with a great heart and a great spirit. Like you said, let's just do my homework, or lead the rosary at my parish, or whatever. Just let me do whatever you want with just such a great spirit and a great heart. So I saw that Damien did that, and like, I would love to one day be able to go to Hawaii and like visit where he walked and all that. if that ever became available, I would love to do that. But it's not just there in those faraway places, but it's here and now, like in the seminary and in the parish and in my apostolate place, that I can do those things. So kind of just trying to keep those things in mind and ask for his intercession, especially in that formation.
And we need to, on a political level, we need to protect men like Damien who are getting torn down, and their statues are getting torn down in Congress. Like, wait, you got to understand who this guy is.
Right.
He's not, he's not somebody who just went in and kind of wreaked havoc, and why he helped. Why there's practical implications of those things, but that's not making this political.
Right. Yeah. Well, and to that point too, like I think like we need more. I don't want to say we need more statues to saints necessarily, but like we need people to see like how awesome and great he is. Like think of how many movies that we make that are like manly or whatever. Like comes to mind is like Die Hard. Okay, you've got like this badass guy who like shoots people up and like he kills the bad guys, he saves the good guys. Okay, what if that's like Saint Damien of Molokai? Like, is a cool action movie? But you know what I mean, like an awesome movie like that. I know there's a Saint movie about him, maybe from the 90s, which is good. But Saint movies tend to be very pious and not like super duper inspiring and like hoorah kind of a thing. But like you could make that movie about Saint Damien of Molokai, like tearing down the idol of these pagans that are trying to torment him.
That's what I'm saying.
So cool.
Somehow, it's Hollywood. We all know how Hollywood's whack and things like that, but they make good films. Like they genuinely make good pictures. Yeah. And like if we somehow got that scene and him climbing the ravine and him going in the sharks, like that would be manly. Like Hacksaw Ridge. It's a great film with a good story. And I think men and women and people in general are really moved by that stuff. They're good films, and somehow, I don't know if anyone out here has a talent of filmmaking, like that's where it should be put, because these stories. This is a man. Like this is a man, not just because he's killing a bunch of people and he's macho, but because he actually did some pretty macho things, but also he was doing these little things for the Lord. Yeah. And it's like if we just saw this, in like a high def film or something like Hacksaw Ridge, that would be unbelievable. That'd be awesome. Yeah. And just showing this to young Catholic guys in grade school, like that would or Saint Ignatius, that would really do some damage in the good way,
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things we can work on at the church, and that's why I guess God wants us here in seminary, and
amen to that.
A lot of good we can do, and a lot of good the lay people in the church can do as well.
Absolutely. So thanks for your conversation, Andrew, and all of your insights. Well, I hate to cut off the conversation here, but we've got evening prayer coming up pretty shortly. So
duties of a seminarian. Yeah. That's how we become saints.
Exactly.
We go to evening prayer maybe 5-10 minutes beforehand even. We finish a Sunday night in a good manner.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me, Nikolai. It was awesome. I wanted to speak about this for a while, so thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation, and thank you, listener, for tuning in. Join us next time for the next episode of the Sem Says podcast.